comfortable posture with your spine straight. Let's do a round of 9 breathings to balance our prana. Exhale. Cover left nostril. Pass it to the other channel and exhale. Two more times. Bringing clear light and exhaling all that anger and attachment. Exhaling the still breath. Change hands. Exhale. Cover right nostril. With both hands, stretching your elbows, move forward, inhale blue light, bring it to both channels down to the navel, sustain for a moment, contract muscles, then shake a little bit and exhale. Another time. Bring it into the central channel and exhale. One more time. And exhale, extending your hands and fingers. Now drop right there where you are. Be aware of your body. And relax. Continue relaxing with each out breath. Become aware of the sounds of the rain. The sensations in your body. Notice everything that is arising in the present moment. And rest right here, right now. Just rest. Now let's set our motivation for this practice to cultivate greater attentional balance, cognitive balance, to cultivate wisdom and understanding in order to find greater freedom and meaning in our lives. Be of benefit to ourselves and others. Now rest with your Shamatha method of your preference, cultivating relaxation, stability and vividness. And now switch to the practice of settling the mind in its natural state. Open your eyes. Identify the space of the mind, that field of perception, where memories, thoughts, images, ideas, fantasies, emotions, moods arise and dissolve. Notice any event that arises in that space. See how it arises, dwells, and dissolves back into the space of the mind. Without grasping, without distraction. As an old man watching children playing on a playground. Now, let's transform this practice into a vipashyana practice by investigating the mind. Notice the impermanence of these thoughts, ideas, memories, fantasies, emotions. Notice how they come and go. Are these mental events and their objects intrinsically sources of pain or pleasure? Watch closely. Investigate with curiosity. Are these mental events I, me, or mine? Ask yourself and investigate. What makes them I, me, or mine? Do they belong to you? Do you have any control over their arising and passing? Are these mental events voluntary or involuntary? Or they are arising on their own, without you choosing to have them or see them arising, or not. And now ask, who is thinking these thoughts? Who is feeling these emotions? And look at the thinker. Can you locate that thinker anywhere in your body? Does it have a shape or color? Is it big or small? Now come to rest in the experience of being aware of being aware. so we can gain greater insight into the mind, find freedom, understanding, and wisdom, and cultivate the causes for genuine happiness. Come back, stretch a little bit. We reached the third application of mindfulness. As you see, this practice is very similar to the Shamatha practice of settling the mind in its natural state. Except we're not just watching the thoughts and mental events as in Shamatha practice, but we are investigating them, trying to figure out how do they exist, how do they appear, how do they vanish. Are they mine or are they not mine? And what makes them mine or I? Right? So for that investigation is that it becomes a vipashyana practice. There's an inquiry. We want to investigate and find an answer, but not an answer that is theoretical or that we learned in a book. We want to get our own answers. We want to see directly from experience and come to our own conclusions. So you might have noticed that when you observe your mind for a long time, like we've been doing this retreat, there might be that voice appearing that is quite judgmental and is very critical of everything you do, and is always telling you that you're wrong or you're not perfect or you could have done more or there's like a voice that is disagreeing with you, right? But when you look at that voice, it's just thoughts. There's not another version of yourself having that commentary and judging you. It's just a thought that arises and vanishes. And then comes another thought. And that thought might be more positive and tell you that you're doing well, that you're in the right direction, or praise you, right? But again, it's just another thought. And the problem we have is that we tend to believe these thoughts. We rave by them and think there is an alter ego or someone else judging us or someone we need to please, or if we only work really hard, that voice is going to be pleased and stop bothering us, right? But why do we believe these thoughts? So let's say a thought arises and says, you are a terrible person. And then we believe it. And we start suffering and thinking that because that thought arises, it must be true. But what would happen if we just, no, it's just a thought. Let it go. I don't have to believe it or pay attention to it if I don't want. Then an emotion might arise. Maybe anger or sadness. And then when that emotion is arising, we fusion with that emotion. And we think, I am an angry person. I am a sad person. I am a depressed person. And we believe that emotion as being always there and defining our personality or the way we are. And then we suffer because of that, because we believe that label we are creating based on an emotion that sometimes is there, sometimes not. Yes, we might have been very habituated to react with anger to many situations, so it might arise frequently, or sadness, or any other emotion, but it's not always there. It arises and it passes. How would it be to notice the emotion, not reifying it, not grasping to it, not fusion yourself, your sense of self with it, and define yourself by that emotion, and just allow it to be there and say, oh, sadness is arising now. Oh, it's gone. Anger is arising. It's gone. And noticing that constant change. Well, if we start taking that distance and not believing all the thoughts that arise and all the emotions, then we start gaining freedom. Right? And especially now that we are in retreat, you've been for a month in retreat, it's a time, a special time during a retreat when you're halfway and a lot of things start getting stirred up and coming up to the surface because we're paying attention. We are observing our bodies, we are observing our minds. So there might be things we've never seen before. Maybe we think there's a lot of thoughts, or there's a lot of emotions that I didn't have before, or sensations, or even perceptions of distant sounds, or other kind of things you usually wouldn't pay much attention because we're very distracted with a lot of activities and busy, right? So there might be some unpleasant experience arising, but in the same way we observe them and we allow them to be there and pass, but not believing all the thoughts, all the emotions that start arising. And especially those thoughts of, I'm not a good practitioner, or my meditation is going so bad, or I can't concentrate. So those thoughts are part of that same internal chit-chat, that internal dialogue that is very judgmental, right? So we have to remember that just by being here, you're doing something amazing. Many people can't even imagine, they have the idea of going into a retreat for a weekend, let alone 2 months. And in these dates of the year, you decided not to spend Christmas, New Year with your family, but come and observe your mind and find that inner wisdom and balance. So that's something to rejoice about. You're doing something incredible here. Just by being here, just by sitting and having the intention, that's something that we can all rejoice for everybody here. And keep remembering that, because when you look from the future to this time, you will see that you were very brave to be removed from all that stimulation that happens in this time of the year and decide to go deeper into introspective mode and face all those thoughts and emotions that we usually don't pay attention to. So that's really a great gift you have given to yourself, and we should all be happy for the effort that everybody's doing here, right? So Be kind to yourself. And if those thoughts arise, they're just thoughts. You can decide not believing them and not paying attention. And the less you pay attention to them and believe them, the less they will arise because they've been ignored. So it's the choice we have moment by moment. And these practices help us work with that by following the instruction of just observing without grasping, like that old man in the park seeing the children playing. We can get there. It requires some practice. Yeah, that's what we are doing here, practicing. Now, we don't have to practice all the meditations we have done. It's good to have the whole map, to know the whole package, to know all the different methods, so that you know, I've tried them and these ones are good for me. But it's important to have a balanced diet. In the same way that you nourish your body, and it's not healthy if you only eat one group of food. You say, I just like to eat bread and cheese and chocolate, and I don't want to eat anything else. I don't want to eat fruits, I don't want to eat vegetables. I don't like them. You're probably gonna get ill. Or if you only eat carbohydrates, or you only eat protein, or you only eat fat, you're gonna have an imbalance in your health, right? So we want to have a balanced diet for the mind. So we need some practice for cultivating calm abiding, focus, presence. We need a practice for cultivating the heart, to connect with others, to love ourselves. And we need a practice for wisdom, for understanding, right? And if we include one more, that is the motivation, is a practice that can help us keep going and direct our minds in the right direction, right? In this way, we find a balanced diet in which we cultivate cognitive balance. The cognitive balance has to do with meaningful intentions and motivations. We cultivate attentional balance, focus, presence. We cultivate cognitive balance, this wisdom of understanding reality and not being constantly projecting fantasies on it. And we cultivate affective or emotional balance in a way that we can learn to deal with our emotions and connect with others from the heart. So if we have these four balances in our diet, then our growth and our practice will be enriched, and we will gain well-being in all these areas, and not just going to one extreme or the other, right? Now, you've seen several shamatha practices. We saw three main ones, which are mindfulness of breathing, settling the mind in its natural state, and shamatha without asana. You've tried them. You don't need to do the three of them and do them every day. You just need to choose one. And that shamatha practice can be enough, right? So some of you have found that mindfulness of breathing is a practice you feel very good with it. Some of you have found that settling the mind has been very beneficial. It's easier for you to do it, and it makes more sense. And then if you want to do two shamatha practices, and alternate them, or in one session switch from, like maybe half of the session do it with one method, and then you feel like changing, that's okay too. Find the shamatha practice that is good for you. There was someone that wanted to experiment with the shamatha practice I mentioned about visualizing the Buddha in front of you. That's okay too. If you want to try another method and practice that calm abiding. But we have these main pillars: relaxation, stability, and vividness in every shamatha practice. We know how to practice it without grasping, without distraction. We know the antidotes. We know that if the mind is scattered or distracted, we bring it back with mindfulness. We know that with introspection, we monitor and apply those antidotes. If we're falling asleep or drowsy, we make something to wake up, right? So we know how to balance our attention. Now choose one practice and do it your main shamatha practice, or two of them if you want, or three if you want to. But the idea in one session is not to be switching several times from one object to another, because then it's not a shamatha practice anymore. It becomes more like choiceless awareness, right? But also sometimes, if you feel you're putting too much pressure, go to those more basic practices where you're just mindful, or you're doing choiceless awareness, or simply drop. Remember the first meditation we did? Just drop. Just don't do anything, not even meditate, just be there. Right? And this you can do it when you're walking, when you're standing, when you're eating, just drop. And that drop is also a way to drop all that internal conceptualization. So just drop in the moment, in the present. It feels really good. So we also saw some practices for balancing the lung. You don't have to do those every day or during many sessions. But now you learned how to look if there's restlessness or agitation in the upper part of the body. Now you have some methods to bring it down. Maybe gentle bast breathing, the jam lung, bring it down, or just doing the 9 breathing exercise can help us overall to have that lung in balance. We know that if we focus on our feet, on our abdomen, the lung will tend to go down. If we do some yoga or tai chi or qigong, that will help us. Or going into nature and just being present, that can help balance the lung. So it's important to know when it gets agitated. Now, these practices of the 4 applications of mindfulness, they are to develop wisdom and understanding, right? You don't have to do the 4 every day or do them in every session. You can do 1 every day. Or you have a kit of practices that can help you in different moments of the day. The idea is that we integrate meditation with our daily lives. So if you are eating lunch or breakfast or dinner, every mouthful is full of sensations. You have tactile sensations, smells, colors, even sounds by chewing your food, right? So if you're fully present, you can be just mindful of how you eat, but you can also investigate how these sensations are arising and dissolving, and also investigate if they are I, me, mine, right? So you can investigate the feelings. Is this food giving rise to experience of pleasure or neutrality, or it's unpleasant, the experience? Is it coming from the food, or is it coming from my mind? So don't make it into a rigid, I have to practice this. No, use it as a way to be in the present and being investigating everything with curiosity, with that mind of a child that wants to discover the world. Like that's the attitude we have to have in our minds, right? In our mindset. So, but you can do 1 session to familiarize with these practices, 1 session every day. So 24 minutes. I'm going to focus on investigating the sensations in the body. The next day, maybe you investigate feelings, right? And that will slowly start getting that integration. So then naturally it will arise when you are walking or eating or even speaking with other people. We will see the fourth application of mindfulness tomorrow. Today was application of mindfulness to the mind. Tomorrow we will see the application of mindfulness to all phenomena. Right? And I will give you an outline so that you remember the main points of each practice. Right? And with that, we will have a package that helps us practice vipashyana in a very simple way, connected to what is going on in the present moment. Right? Now, we only have one more topic. We also have the practices of the heart that you already know: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. We did them for ourselves because we have to be well first ourselves in order to spread that loving kindness and compassion to others. Right? So it's very important to take care of yourself and love you and accept you and also feel compassion when you're suffering. So we did this and again, you can do one every day. You can do a session of loving kindness today, and tomorrow you can switch and do compassion, and the day after, empathetic joy. But if you're suffering, you're having a pain, or it can be physical or mental, but that's a good opportunity to practice compassion right there. So don't force yourself to practice something that doesn't feel because it's in your schedule, right? Better say, may I be free of this pain, of this great emotional suffering. May I be free. So, and if you're just feeling joyful and light, you can practice empathetic joy and start rejoicing about your practice, about your discipline, about being here, about the beings that surround you, right? So look which practice is appropriate for each moment of your life. That's the point. So with this, we have covered most of the main topics of the path. And of course, there's a lot more teachings, and we have a library full of interesting things that we could go deeper into each topic or experience of life, right? There's a whole collection of knowledge available to us. But the important thing is that we practice these indispensable things of the path. Otherwise, we fill ourselves with too much information, and it's also not good, right? But it's good to have the whole map, because if you only have one part of the map, then you don't know where that fits in the whole path, in the whole process. So you might go do your own retreat in a cabin in the mountain, and then you arrive and you say, what should I do? Oh, I only know how to do mindfulness of breathing. I'm going to watch my breath and hope that this leads me out of samsara. Well, maybe it's not going to happen because you don't know how that fits within the whole picture, right? So we've seen most of the whole map. Now, there's one more topic that is very important, and it's karma. You've heard the word karma many times. There might be some misconceptions that in general we see now in the modern world, that it has become a very used word, but many times in the wrong way. People tend to think that karma is like, it's your karma, implies something negative, right? But karma just means action. So whether it's positive or negative depends to us. But karma is the retribution of our actions. So we're going to be focusing today and tomorrow in this topic of karma to have it clear understanding of it. And then we have Sunday that is free. We're not going to have teaching. And it's good that we finish the year with the topic of karma, because we can kind of check how we lived this year, what we cultivated through our actions in this year, but also kind of let go, right? And start fresh with a new beginning next year. So from Monday on, we won't have the morning session, only the afternoon session, and you will have more time to practice. And during those afternoon sessions of the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing mainly practices of the heart, both of the 4 measurables and the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. They're practices for the heart, but now we're expanding them towards others, connecting with others, and that will help our retreat also feel like we're feeding that part that we need to develop, so that when we come out of retreat, we feel connected with all the beings we're going to encounter as we go out of retreat. Okay? So, and also I will have more time by not doing the morning sessions, so that I can focus with each one of you into how to make that balanced diet for each one of you, and find the practices that are good for you, and the rhythm, the schedule, and also what's coming next for you, right? How to practice, if you want to do further retreats. I will finish with some advice about finding teachers, retreat centers, places to meditate, how to integrate this with your daily life. But also checking, because still you have 2 more weeks after I leave. I'm leaving on the 16th or 17th, I think. But you have 2 more weeks to start coming gradually out of retreat, and how to make the best out of that time that you still have, right? But right now, we've passed the most difficult part, because the first half is like you're going uphill, and it seems that uphill is never going to end. I like doing bike camping, bike packing, going on a bicycle with your house, your tent, your everything, your house, right? And one of the most difficult trips I did, my partner and I were cycling from Spain to Greece. And there were a lot of uphills and challenges in the way. It was like a retreat. And sometimes we were on the bicycle, and you're going uphill, and you're carrying the weight, although you have very little possessions. It's a very minimalistic house. Still, you're carrying your clothes, your laptop, your tent, your stove, everything. And then you're pedaling up, and it seems like you're never going to reach the top, and you're dehydrated and pedaling, and you feel you're not going to make it. But once you reach the top, then it's amazing, because you go down very fast without effort, and it's like flying. It's a really amazing experience, and you have the landscape, the wind. You can just relax and meditate in that experience, right? So in retreat is similar. The first half is like you're going uphill. And when you're about to reach that first half, all the mental afflictions start arising and hitting you from everywhere. Sometimes you're very angry, sometimes you're very sad, sometimes you can't bear the place or the food or the environment, and you're angry with yourself because you're not making progress, and the retreat is going to finish and you haven't achieved anything. Like, it's a lot of pressure. But once you reach the half, it's like the other half is just going down gently. So we've reached that half, and I want to congratulate you. And we also finish a year at the same time. So we're starting a new year, a new beginning, with a new motivation to be kinder to ourselves and to enjoy the ride. So the next weeks will be just letting that practice and all that we've learned to be integrated without forcing ourselves, without pressure, just enjoying the time we have left in retreat. So don't feel that it's going to be hard because it's not. And then the last week, usually you're almost out of retreat. The last week, you start talking with others, realizing you had a very strong bond that you've created with your fellow retreatants. So it's a time to kind of slow down with the sessions, have less meditation sessions during the day, start having more social interaction, and gradually coming out of retreat. That's very helpful, so that you integrate that week with your first week out of retreat. If you're traveling or you're going into another course or retreat or teaching, or you're going back home, that you have a smooth integration and not just go out of retreat after days of intense practice and silence. It's very helpful. And then, there might be a little adaptation at the beginning when you're out of retreat, because you might find some activity, seeing so much activity. If you go into a busy city with a lot of stimulation, you might feel overwhelmed or find it disturbing. But it's a process of learning to observe. Now it's outside, it's in phenomena, and the fourth application of mindfulness that we're going to see tomorrow is going to help us to observe all those as phenomena arising and passing, and learn to keep that groundness and make your mind your retreat center. And no matter where you are and what you're doing, to be able to retreat whenever you need and settle. Okay? So keep going and be kind to yourself. Don't believe those thoughts. And remember the main points of each of the 4 applications of mindfulness is to observe, then question. Impermanence, are they sources of pleasure or pain intrinsically? Are they I, me, mine? So these are guidelines to investigate. You can do more questions, or you can maybe not formulate the question, but do the investigation in your own way. Same with the practices of the heart. You don't have to visualize the rays of light or the dark smoke or anything. You can do your own form, your own method, as long as you connect from the heart with the practice. That's the whole point, right? So these are just some methods that have worked for many meditators. But don't feel you have to do it in this way. If you have learned it in other way, or you read in a book a new technique and you want to try it and you say, I really like how this teacher is presenting loving kindness. For example, Sharon Salzberg, she's devoted quite a lot of time to write books about loving kindness. She's an expert in loving kindness, right? And so she has many methods that you might find very soothing and helpful. So experiment with them and find what works for you. Okay? Any question? Yeah?
The concept of not me, mine is not very clear for me. Like if I have a thought, it's based on the experience I had, and how do I disconnect it from?
Yeah. The idea is not to disconnect it or believe that is not mine or that is mine, but to look how it appears to you, right? So when we hear a sound, you hear now the wind. Can you hear it? Do you perceive that sound to be yours? Somehow it doesn't seem like it's yours, right? Or the dog barking. But you can hear it. It's appearing, the perception of that sound, to your auditory consciousness. You are experiencing in the same way that we experience a sensation in the body or a thought, right? But why do we say this thought is mine, but the sound is not mine? Why? So the idea is to investigate so that we break or dissolve that reification of grasping and believing that there is an I that possesses that thought or that emotion, right? It's just thought arising and vanishing. There's only emotion arising and vanishing. So by doing that questioning, we start coming to an understanding that is not just logical or rational, but is an experience. Now, you might think, well, I can only perceive my thoughts, nobody else can perceive them here, and I cannot perceive the thoughts of the others. Yet that's not entirely true, because as you go deeper into meditation, you can even dissolve those boundaries and be able to perceive the thoughts of others. Actually, that's one of the side effects of Shamatha practice, is that you develop clairaudience, clairvoyance, able to read the thoughts of others or have the intuition, right? And there was a story of Lama Yeshe, the founder of the FPMT and Kopan Monastery, that they were in a teaching and they were talking about this. And one of the students said, I'm going to make a test for him. I'm going to focus very strongly on orange juice in my mind and see if he can read my mind. And he was concentrated, and suddenly the Lama looked at him and said, why don't you stop thinking about the orange juice and meditate or focus on the teaching? And he was really surprised, right? And you don't need to be a realized meditation practitioner or even a Buddhist or anything to develop that ability. It's a mundane ability that we can all develop. There's actually modern school of thought. It's called the Silva method. Have you heard about it? It was very popular in the 60s and 70s.
The
Silva method.
Silva.
So it was an engineer that started experimenting with the mind and seeing that he was teaching some techniques to his children, and then when he was helping them study for the exams, but before he formulated the question, the daughter was already answering. And he discovered, how is that even possible? Like, she's reading my mind somehow. So he came up with a whole book and method of teaching. And there was one of his students who at the beginning, he was a pilot, and at the beginning he followed the methods and the techniques to develop these abilities, but he just couldn't guess or perceive anything, right? But by practicing and practicing, he became quite adept, and he was able to be in a room full of people and be pointing out of the thoughts everybody was thinking. Like it just came to him very natural. So there's really not that limit or boundary between us and our minds and thinking these are my thoughts and nobody can ever see them or perceive them, right? Or these are your thoughts. So as we do that investigation, it will become more evident to us that there's nothing intrinsically on their own side that makes them I, me, mine. And that's just a label we've been so used to impute to that dependent arising that we believe it to be true. But when we investigate, there's nothing there that makes them I, me, mine. So, in the same way that sounds don't belong to us. So that's liberating. But we don't have to try to force ourselves to perceive them in that way. We just look and say, why do I have this experience that they are mine? If I can't even control them. I can generate a thought consciously, a voluntary thought, but there's a bunch of involuntary thoughts that I have no control over. They're just arising. So how can they be mine or I if I don't even have control over them? I can't create them or decide to stop them. They're just there. It's that cascading waterfall. Right? That as we do the shamatha practice, it will start pacifying, calming down. And with the vipashyana, we are investigating and realizing their true nature. What is their true nature? That they are empty of inherent solid existence. Their dependent arisings, their appearances, arising and passing. Okay? So just by doing the questioning and looking, even if we don't get the answer right away, that exercise will lead us to get greater insight and wisdom. And as one of you was pointing out in one of our interviews, you might be walking in nature and suddenly an insight comes. You have an aha moment where somehow everything fits together and you just get it. But it's not like a rational get it, like, I logically understand all the ideas that of why this exists in this way or in that way. No, it's just one instant in which you just get it, because all those veils are those cognitive veils, those emotional oscurations, those mental afflictions are like clouds covering the sky. So suddenly they dissipate and your inner wisdom just knows how things are. So it might not happen even during meditation. And as you practice and practice, those insights will come more and more and will become a new way of perceiving reality, a new way of understanding how you exist, how others exist, how everything manifests in an endless network of interdependent arising. Yeah? Okay. Well.